Welcome to revAMPd, the #1 amputee podcast hosted by an amputee and brought to you by Dilatory Orthotics and Prosthetics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm Brian Mosier, the social media advisor for Dilatory, and I also happen to be a left below knee amputee. Let's get into today's episode. How's it going, everyone? My guest today is a patient advocate and a right above knee amputee, Josh Green. Josh, welcome to revAMPd.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Thanks for coming. Hey, so tell me a little bit about yourself. When did you become an amputee and what led up to that?
Well, I had my operation when I was 4. I was born without a right knee joint. So my femur, fibula, and tibia were all fused together. According to my mom, because I was too young and don't remember the story, but I had 3 surgeries leading up to when the doctors and my family and I went to church thought that I would have a best chance at a normal life being above the knee amputee.
Do you think, as you've lived your life, do you think that's been accurate? Do you think it's given you the opportunity to do all of the things that you've wanted to do in life so far?
Yeah, without a doubt. If the alternative would have been, I just would have had a straight leg that was, somewhat bowed, and it never would have bent. So,
oh wow,
yeah, I think my life's definitely been better being an amputee.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it sounds like it. So what was it like for you growing up as an amputee? Were you active? Did you play sports?
Yeah, actually. So I had my surgery in September. And then a couple months later in December, I turned 5. So it was like right around when you're starting preschool, kindergarten, little league. So that when I was 5 years old, and I believe it's probably end of May or June, I started T-ball and played T-ball, all the way up through, played varsity in high school. Also played basketball at the local Y, started in like 2nd grade. Started golfing in 3rd grade. So, my parents never treated me different, and anything I wanted to be involved with, they allowed me to do so. And, looking back on it, I was proud because there was no special rules for me. There was no special, coaches didn't treat me different. I didn't, people, if I hit a ball to third base, the third baseman wasn't taking his time to let me run to first, it was, if I made it, I made it. And if I didn't, I was out. So
as far as other kids and such, did you have any trouble making friends? Were you bullied or picked on or anything like that? I remember a couple instances, but, the thing is, and I do, some things with some of the children's hospitals around here, kids are actually really good to each other when, especially smaller kids. When you're 4 or 5 years old, my parents said that most of the other kids thought it was like really cool that I had like a robot leg and they all were interested in it. And, it kind of made me like the popular kid in kindergarten and 1st grade because everyone knew who I was, and it helped I wasn't shy. And, the few instances I do remember getting bullied, that was when I was a little bit older, say 5th or 6th grade. And, basically I just, they would make comments about basically, making fun of you or wondering how you could even play a sport. And, I was mainly the pitcher. So anyone that kind of bullied me, I took care of that on my own. So I know that you're a father, that you have children. What's it been like for them? I mean, this is all they've ever known since they were born, but has it been any different for them? Do you think that you being an amputee has maybe helped them be more empathetic and sympathetic of other people who have disabilities?
I think so. And a good example this year is actually, I just learned the other day is my son, my 12-year-old, he just started 7th grade and he volunteers in the mornings to help with the
the kids with autism and this and that. And they do, he helps them bake cookies and brownies, which they go around and sell at lunchtime to raise money to go on like their special field trips and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm assuming that, you know, him growing up with that, you know, kind of helped put that on his heart that, you know, there's, you know, the kids aren't really different just because there's something wrong with them. You know, a lot of instances it makes them stronger because they have to deal with that on top of, you know, being a normal kid.
Right. I know that as you went through life, I know that for a long time you were working. In fact, if I'm correct, you became an executive chef at one time.
Yeah. Yep. I started right out of high school, you know, kind of just started as a job. You know, I was always interested in cooking. I always watched, you know, the joke was if me and my brother, if we weren't watching Sports Center, we were watching the Food Network. So I was always interested in cooking and kind of the science behind it and all that stuff. And so right out of high school, I started, you know, this is the line chef, just kind of work while I was going to school, and just found out I was pretty good at it. And I moved up really fast in the company. And before I know it, I was a salaried manager right after my 21st birthday. So
wow.
From there, I kind of figured I want to do it. And yeah, just my very last job, I was the executive chef at a country club. So it was a lot of fun.
What's it like for you? And I understand that, you know, you don't have anything to compare this to that would be different, but what's it like as an amputee working in a busy kitchen?
It was a big struggle. Not as, you know, it's not like anybody even knew because you're wearing pants, but the hardest part was, you know, a kitchen is going to be, you know, on the line where all the equipment is going to be 400 or 500 degrees.
Right.
And so my biggest problem was sweating constantly, getting blisters. And, you know, what led to me having to retire from that type of work is just my off days. I would have to have my leg off because I have blisters and rashes, and it was just, you know, it wasn't very comfortable. And as much as I liked to do in that work, just physically, it wasn't allowing me to do that anymore.
One of the stories that I had read about you said that, you know, is you're retiring from this and, you know, and applying for disability, that maybe you had some difficulties where you weren't able to play with your kids as much as maybe you wanted to. Did that affect your life that way from having these issues?
Yeah. You know, and being a chef, you're on salary. So it's not like you're working your 40 hours a week. You're working anywhere from 50 to 70 to 80 during the busy season, you know, holidays and that.
Oh, wow.
And so basically my 2 days off or 1 day off a week, I was spent with my leg off on crutches, or, you know, so my kids wanted to go do something. I really wasn't up for it. You know, on top of just working that much and being tired, you have to deal with the physical part of not really being able to wear your leg, or if I did want to wear it, it was just so painful. It just wasn't enjoyable. So yeah, all that culminated with applying for disability.
So I know that, I don't know, I'll call it a chance encounter, but I know that you were at a healthcare facility and you ended up having an encounter with someone from Ohio, Willa. How did that, at that time, how did that change what you were doing from a prosthetic perspective?
Well, I mean, it was just, I can't even describe how it all came together, because it was at a time, like, so I'm transferring from work to disability. So I don't have health insurance at this point.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm looking at a doctor, I'm trying to figure out, you know, this leg, my current prosthesis is probably like 6 years old. So you know how that is. It's all out of date. It's not functioning well. And so I just happened to be in just for a regular health appointment, and just me and one other lady sitting in the lobby. She looks at me and she's like, I was wearing pants, and she's like, do you have a prosthetic leg? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, let me give you this business card. I have a friend that, you know, works for Ohio Willa, and they're always looking for amputee models, especially above the knee, because it's hard to, she always complained that it's hard to find people that are mobile, you know, because most above knee amputees are geriatric, and so they're not really moving around too well.
Right.
And, you know, so that's how that started. And I
took the card and I emailed the contact there, and that's how the ball all started with that. And it was just a crazy, almost like she was sent there for me, because it's still hard to explain how that even happened.
And so I know, what are you at now prosthetically? What kind of system are you currently using?
Right now I have my socket's a Willa 1 system.
Okay.
Which I love. I was involved with it was a VA, test research project for Willa, and I was involved from day one, from the testing. And as soon as the testing was over, they went to market with that. So I've kept that. So I'm on my 5th year with this. And then my knee, I have a plie 3 from Freedom. And then as far as feet goes, currently I have on the Maverick Extreme AT, but I'm blessed to be able to have about 4 or 5 feet that I can change depending on what activity I'm doing for the day.
That's fantastic. And I know that you've also done some, I guess we call it patient modeling for Freedom Innovations. How did you get involved with Freedom? I know that you like their product. I tested the Connects for a couple of weeks, which I love. And as soon as my insurance gives me the green light, I'm going to add that to my collection because it's done some amazing things for me. So how did you come in to be part of the Freedom family?
Well, I was at a trade show with Willa, and it comes back to Willa first to get the backstory, but so we did this testing for the Willa 1 for the AK version. Well, I knew next they were doing the BK version, so they really didn't need any above knee testers or models for like the next 3 years, because it's quite a big, elaborate testing, about R&D and all that.
Right.
So I asked permission if I could seek out another company, or if any opportunities came about, if I could, go work with them. So I ended up meeting a sales guy from Freedom, and I tested out the plie, and then this is when I'd say about a year before the first Maverick Extreme came out, he brought in like a beta version and wanted me to test it out for him. And so that relationship just started there. And within a couple months, I was on the road with him a couple times a week, going to different CPOs and kind of telling them my experience with that. And from that turned into going to AOPA and AAOPs with Freedom. And then, they were coming out with this new marketing thing for like the plie knee and like the different feet. And it was basically called Restore Your Everyday. And they asked me if I wanted to come out to California for a week to do some photos and do some online marketing with them and stuff. So it's kind of all just, started from that little meeting and snowballed into, some great opportunities.
And I know that you have appeared on different types of advertising and in publications and magazines within the O&P community. I saw not too long ago where your daughter had picked up a magazine and opens it up and you're in it. What was that like for her?
Yeah, it was pretty funny because she turned 4 at the end of March. So she's still, the little kid and surprised and everything. So we're sitting in my current CP's office, and I think it was the new issue of Amputee, and she just looking through all the magazines, trying to keep from being bored. And she looks on the back cover and she's like, "Wait a minute, that's you." And I'm like, and I didn't see that issue yet. I'm like, "Yeah, that is." She's like, "That's hilarious." And, it's funny because it happened with one of my other sons. The very first time I was in an ad for Willa, and we were at one of the offices and he flipped through it. And it's just funny because I didn't know at the time either. So we were both kind of surprised. And I think it's, a lot of times especially my older children, they're proud of you and they'll say they're proud of you, but to see it, on their faces where it's like, it's not scripted.
Right.
And, you can just see that they're like, "Oh, that's awesome. That's my dad."
So what kind of dispel some myths for me here? I've come to find out since I've since I've started working in O&P and been doing the podcast and talking to a lot of different people, a lot of amputees, I don't like to use this term, I will, a lot of everyday amputees. So people that don't work in O&P, people that aren't patient models. So I call them everyday amputees. A lot of everyday amputees, they don't understand the role of a patient model, especially at a trade show. And so sometimes there's some kind of off-color comments made and things like that. What is the role of a patient model when you go to trade shows?
Well, the biggest misconception is that we're, there to sell a product. Okay. That could be further from the truth, because if someone like Freedom or OSA or whoever brings you to a trade show, they're there to tell all the other CPs coming around the booths and everything, tell them the truth.
Right.
If there's something because you can't like every single thing about a product. There always is going to be something that you wish was different.
Oh, absolutely.
Because everybody's different. So something that works well for you, Brian, is not going to work well for me.
Yep.
And same with the other person. So one big, misconception is that, well, the only reason you're saying you like this product is because you get paid to, or,
right.
This, because you get a bunch of them for free. And, that's not true. There's a lot of times that there's been things that I've tried that I'm like, well, I'd honestly rather not wear this because I'm going to get asked a lot about it, and I'm not going to have a lot of nice things to say because
right.
It doesn't work for me. So, the awesome thing is that there's for Freedom, there's probably 4 of us, and 2 are above and 2 are below knee. So the above knee, we get, it's great. We get to try all the new knees, anything in testing, all the feet, and, getting to go to the shows is great, getting to travel and all that. But, it's, a lot of time it kind of upsets me, like how you're saying, like, a lot of people, just assume that, you're getting paid and you get commission and you get this and that. I don't have to say anything about the knees. If someone posts in a group on Facebook, what do you think about the plie knee? It's not like I get paid if they go ask their CP and buy one, so.
Right.
I tell my honest opinion and obviously if there weren't more benefits than things that weren't great about it, I wouldn't be wearing it in the first place. But
sure.
There's a lot of things that people are think that we're on the company payroll, which isn't true.
Right. One of the things that I'll admit is that for anybody who doesn't really know, there's always those people who know you, and then there's people who think they know you. And so for anyone who doesn't really know me, I have a tendency sometimes that I can be not only very sarcastic, but also very brash. I always tell my wife that I should have been born British. Because sometimes I just sound like a total jerk. I don't mean to, but that's just what happens. And so when you and I first started interacting on social media, I kind of gave you a hard time about things. And of course that was really before I started working in O&P. And now I have learned so much about how things really work compared to what my what do we say our preconceived notions are. But one of the things that you and I see all the time in some of these Facebook groups and things is we see, I'll call them feet wars. And of course it happens with knees as well for AKs. And I'm sure it happens with hands and things for upper extremity amputees. But where people I have, and I won't name, a bunch of companies, but, I have XYZ foot and it's the best foot that's ever been made. And you should have this foot. And someone else says, well, I have ABC foot and no, it's the best foot ever made. And so we get these arguments and these fights where and then there's people like you and I that come along and we're like, you have Freedom, I have Rush. And so, you have what you like and I have what I like. But since I've been doing this, I've been able to try, maybe a dozen feet from a dozen different companies. And so I can see, hey, there's not just one perfect foot out there. What can we do to kind of help? You can't change people's personalities, but what can we do to maybe kind of help people see that what works for you or I isn't going to work for them and vice versa?
All right. Well, the biggest thing I can compare to that is if there was only a couple of feet that worked for everybody, there wouldn't be 500 feet on the market.
Right.
You know, what there's every company has their high level foot, you know, their K3, K4, every company has their low level foot, K1, right. K starter foot. And, you know, a lot of people, they don't, you know, they could have, like before I started working for Willa, I didn't realize how many different companies and parts and pieces there were.
Yeah.
So for people that aren't very aware, you know, and all they know is what their CP tells them, and their CP might say, well, this is the best foot I've ever used. And so they have it in their head, you know, well, if he thinks this, it has to be true. You know, he doesn't, you know, in the Cleveland area, you know, speaking of, you say you wear Rush, I can't believe it because Rush is a big company, you know, sells a lot of feet, and there's like nobody in the Cleveland area that's even really have heard of them.
Oh, wow.
Like I've ran into 4 different CPs in Northeast Ohio, and they're like, what's a Rush foot?
Oh, wow.
I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, well, I was like, I don't wear one, but there's enough people that do that. They're nice feet. And so, you know, a lot of it comes back to doing your own homework. And that's why I always fight for people to advocate for themselves, because your prosthetist might only know 10% of what's out there. It all depends on the local sales guy and how much time he has to visit the office. And, you know, you got to do your own research. And I think if people do their own research, so a lot of those arguments will calm down because they'll see what's out there. And then the other part of it is that people will see, like people like you and I and others that run, that can swim and, you know, play sports. And so they think, well, wow, if I get that foot, I'm going to be able to do that. And when I go out on visits with, you know, new amputees, you know, they want to run and they want to do this. And I'm like, well, did you do that before you were an amputee? Did you run? Did you dance? Did you do 5Ks? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, you can't expect to do it after. I'm like, right. It's great to have goals and to want to do those things, but just because you have a certain foot doesn't mean you're going to go out and run a 5K or, you know, go play basketball for the weekend.
Right. And I think that's a misconception that we see all the time, because I mean, like you, I constantly hear, oh, well, if I have this foot, I'll be able to do this. Well, no, you still need the ability, the physical ability, well, you know, whatever it is to run or to swim or to whatever it is they're wanting to do. And I think people somehow think that, you know, the feet and the knees are magical. And they, you know, and they're going to give them like, oh, I've never played basketball in my life, but if I have XYZ foot or XYZ knee, then I'll be like the next Michael Jordan, you know, and it doesn't work that way. I might be dating myself because I don't think Michael Jordan's played in a very long time. But you know, whoever, I don't even know. I don't watch basketball anymore, so I don't know. LeBron. There we go.
Well, I'm from Cleveland, so yeah, LeBron. There you go.
But, you know, and so I remember I had a patient, and it wasn't one of our patients, but I had an amputee get mad at me once because she had come to me and she said, you know, I know that you help advocate for patients and whatnot. And she said, I really want this microprocessor knee. I think it'll help me. And I was like, well, tell me about, you know, what you're hoping to do with the microprocessor knee. And she said, well, I really just need to transfer from the wheelchair to the couch, from the wheelchair to the bed. And I'm like, I'm sorry, the insurance is not going to approve you for that. And I mean, like the level of hate I got went through the roof. And, you know, I tried to explain, but, you know, she just didn't want to hear. She wanted to, and so my prosthetist, excuse me, not my prosthetist, my physiatrist and I interviewed him. His episode was this past Monday. We had talked about the iPhone effect in the O&P world, where a new foot comes out and everyone thinks they have to have that foot. You know, new iPhone comes out, like admittedly, right? So the iPhone 8 comes out and I'm like, I don't want that. I'm waiting for the 10. And now they're like, oh, the 10 is going to be delayed. And you know, so you get a little like, and it's just stupid. But people do that with feet, you know, they're like, oh, I have to have this. But
just like yesterday in one of the Facebook groups, somebody posts, I'm in the market for my, you know, I'm getting casted, you know, what's the best foot? And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
there's going to be 5,000 comments. It's going to be nothing but arguments. And that's like my biggest, I grew up obviously without social media.
Right.
I never met another amputee until I was in my 20s.
Oh, wow.
And, people, I would have loved to have these groups around, to have people to bounce ideas off of, and to have, what's this product like? What's that product like? And, people half the time in these groups, everyone, it's just bickering and, people not uplifting each other and not having each other's back. And, like I said, when I was little, I would have loved to have something like this. So, getting kind of off topic, but as much as, we were talking about people education and learning other products, I think that, can solve some of the problems that we've been talking about. Is, just realizing that at the end of the day, we all are amputees.
Right.
And, we're, 2 million, of us out there. And of those 2 million, not everyone uses a prosthetic. So even less they use prosthetics. And, we got to have each other's backs. These companies, some of them, I love Freedom, I love Willa, but at the end of the day, they're in it to make money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if they weren't making money, they wouldn't be in business. So, we're the ones that have to have our backs. You can't,
Right. Of course, they're going to talk up their products, and I had, our regional sales rep for Rush, he had reached out to me and he said, I have a patient who wants to talk to someone who wears a Rush foot, but does not work for the company. And he said, would you be willing to do that? And I was like, of course, I'll be, I'll answer his questions or whatever. And I've done that a couple of times because I don't represent any manufacturer. I work for an O&P company. And so we use, dozens and dozens of different manufacturers. But so I kind of take, and I tell them, and I had a patient and she said, I've tried the Rush, I've tried the Connects, and I know that you have too. And so she wanted to talk to me about that. And I did. And I still don't know what she chose to do there. But when you test different feet, you work in O&P, you get to test different feet, then you can give more feedback.
Right. And I always tell people I'm 6'3", 250.
Yeah.
So almost every foot that works for me is not going to work for you.
No.
I have to have a very, very, very firm heel.
Yep.
Or I'll just basically the term crush the heel.
Yep.
Where I'll just feel like I'm sinking into the ground.
Right.
So when I have a category 10 Maverick with the bumpers, it's great for me. But if I tell you to try it, you're going to feel like you're walking on a cement block.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If someone who's, 5 foot tall, 125 pounds would take the exact foot we have on, they would be like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. Because it's just, where we are, with our height and our weight is not, that's why there's categories of feet. And I think sometimes people fail to understand that.
Yeah. It's not all apples to apples. Actually, none of it's apples to apples. And that's why, there's so many different companies and so many different specialties and this and that. And, it all comes back to, like I said, people being educated and not trying to fight each other about it. Because it's just like people that like Chevys and people that like Fords.
Right.
Yeah. There's just some people you can't talk into the other thing, and the other ones you can reason with them. So that's my best comparison.
Absolutely. And this is a little off topic, but just it goes along with this. I was telling my wife this story the other night. We were talking about milk. And for me personally, we drink Fairlife milk, love it. Won't go back to anything else. When I was a kid growing up, and I grew up in the late 70s and 80s, my dad would not buy Fikes Milk, which was a local milk company in southwestern Pennsylvania. He refused. And so one day when I became a teenager, I asked him, I said, why won't you buy Fikes Milk? I don't understand. And he was like, well, 45 years ago, one of their trucks hit my first wife and totaled the car. And he said, so I'm not buying Fikes Milk. And I'm like, so by this time, I'm like 17, 18 years old. And I said, do you have any idea how stupid that sounds? And so, but he wouldn't budge. And it's, it's the same, similar, like you said, Chevy or Ford or, whether it's Rush or Freedom or whatever, people get stuck on this and like, oh, I have to have this. I've had 5 feet, permanent. Well, no foot is really permanent, but 5 feet that I've used for extended periods of time since I became an amputee, 5 different companies. each one has functioned differently. They've all been at least a K3 and they've each functioned for me differently. Some of them I absolutely hated, and some of them, more than one of them I've absolutely loved. And so I really think it's about people. You're right. When you said people need to research, they really do. I like to swim. People who know me, I love to swim, and I didn't want to wear one of those silly covers. And for people that do, that's fine. If it works for you, keep doing it. That's great. Doesn't work for me. I didn't want to wear a cover, and I didn't want a second prosthesis to, I need to put this prosthesis on to go swim or whatever. I want the same leg that I walk around in every day. Prosthesis. Oh my goodness, I have to call it that, or I might get dinged by people. And so I did the research, and I found out, okay, if I have one of X amount of feet, different over several feet, if I have the limb logic, which I have, and then, if I have, this sleeve and this socket set up, I can wear my leg and my prosthesis into the pool. I can just take my shoes off,
right,
get in the pool, swim, come back, dry off, go home. And so, but in order to do that, I had to do the research. And then I had to sit down with my prosthetist and say, this is what I researched. What do you think? And so
right,
and that's what I did, and it works for me. So for anybody listening, I don't be like, oh, well, I'll do that and it'll work for me. Maybe, maybe not. But it works for me. So research, I think that, that's a good message. I think that we should send to people to do their own homework and to research, and maybe not always rely on everything people say on social media about different feet and different knees.
And another huge thing you did for yourself right there is you advocated for yourself.
Right.
Which is what I try to teach people. And a lot of people aren't good at speaking up and think that their prosthetist, always has their back. And I would say that majority do.
Right.
But, a lot of, you have to go in there and tell them what you're looking for, tell them what you want, and don't settle, because you're allowed to switch prosthetists.
Absolutely.
Just because you bring in a prescription doesn't mean you're stuck with him or her.
Right.
And, it's just like any other profession that some may not want to do the paperwork or try and fight for you, or they're swamped, whatever company they work for. And, people don't realize that, you realize this is your leg, and I've had bad sockets and they stink. Like when you wake up every day and it's pinching you in the groin, or it's for a below knee, probably, in the way of your knee and in the back of your knee. You don't have to accept that until you sign that paper for delivery. You can change whatever you want.
Absolutely.
So, and another thing people don't realize is when you go to a prosthetist, they only get, the way insurance has changed completely. They don't get paid by the hour.
No.
They don't get paid by how many times you're there. They get paid per socket, per prescription,
Absolutely.
So they say, they may make, just throw out $5,000. They're getting that $5,000, but they see you twice or they see you 100 times.
Exactly.
So, I tell people, if you feel like they're rushing you or you feel like you haven't seen them enough, it's your duty to make appointments, to tell them you're not happy, because, on the flip side, other people are like, I can't believe, it's taken so long. It's been 5 appointments. They're making so much money off me, blah, blah, blah. And I just sit there and kind of snicker, because I'm like, they're actually doing you a favor.
Right. Absolutely.
They don't have to see you that much.
No.
But they want, they want to. So, it all comes back to the education part, because, there's a lot of complaining that's done that, it doesn't need to be if you just know the process and, know the systems and the checks and balances within the insurance, community that happens.
Absolutely. And the fact that you mentioned that, as you know, I work for an O&P company. And so I know that when a patient comes in, even me, I'm a patient here, and even me, when we come in and we say, you know what, I feel like my foot just needs to be adjusted or turned, just slightly or whatever, even though that may be a half-hour appointment, we're not billing for that. We're not charging the patient anything for that. We're not billing any insurance for that. It's totally comped to the patient, because that's the way right now that the O&P industry is set up. And so it's not like when someone visits their primary care physician and, maybe they have a copay, or at least, they're billing the insurance. If not, it's not like that at all in O&P. And I think a lot of amputees don't understand that. And they just think, oh, they're getting rich from me. And that's not, that's definitely not how OMP works at all. Because
it's my CP told me, he's like, the days of CPs getting rich are long gone.
Oh yeah.
Some bad apples ruined that for them, in the 90s, but
absolutely.
We started a new website through Freedom.
Right.
And basically it's kind of what, I brought it up to the marketing guys there because, and I mainly started with just their products. I'm like, you can hand out instruction manuals all you want, but some people have to see and hear, such as videos or recordings or whatever to actually learn. And, so, that's one of the videos that I put on there was, how to find a prosthetist, the questions you need to ask and your rights as the patient. There's a lot of big companies that, I compare to the Walmart of CPs because, you're seeing someone new every time you go and this and that, and, some of the mom and pop places can't provide you enough services. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of things to find out, a lot of resources you can use, to find people like that.
Right. And you're right. Prior to becoming an amputee, I went to one of those companies that, that you're describing for orthotic needs for some braces and stuff. And, I didn't see the same person every time I went, and not the practitioner. Okay. Not the practitioner, but the company treated me like I was just a number. And
right.
At the time, where I was at the time, where I was living at the time, that was my only option unless I wanted to drive, an hour or more. And I didn't want to do that at the time. So I stuck with it. But when I became an amputee, I knew I absolutely do not want to go to that company, for my prosthesis. Because of how I was treated, during orthotic visits. But and obviously that company doesn't care because, as you said, they're like the Walmart. So losing me or me not even going for something else, whatever, that doesn't affect their bottom line at all. But then, the independent companies that are out there, like where I work for, we don't have that mentality, and you build these relationships. We have 8 prosthetists here, and I would trust any of them to do anything that I needed for me. However, admittedly, even though I know them and I trust them, when it's one that hasn't worked on my prosthesis before or hasn't seen me before, I still get nervous because I have that relationship with my prosthetist that I've built over a couple of years now. And so it's kind of like, I don't want to say family, but that's what it comes down to. And people say, oh, I see my prosthetist once a year. And I just want to be like, what? Like,
your he must have made you the best. He must have made you the best socket ever.
Yeah. There have been times that I've seen my prosthetist more than I've seen members of my family. Because you need things, you need adjustments, or you need a new socket, or you need, whether you need socks or, whatever the case may be. And so I always tell people, find that process, whoever it is, even if it's not with my company, find where you're happy, find who treats you right, because like you said, you have that choice.
Right.
So what have been some of the things that as an adult that you have been involved in, activities and things that you like doing as an adult?
Well, I still love playing golf. I haven't got to do too much of that lately as my, kids take up more and more and more of my free time, basically all my free time.
Sure.
But one thing that's been great for that is I've always loved coaching basketball and baseball. And as especially my older son, who's a freshman in high school now, the last 2 years I've coached his junior high basketball team for a school, and then I've also coached his summer league team for baseball. And so that's kind of like what you get involved with something, and it may not be a big deal. I mean, you may only want to have to spend a couple hours a week doing it, but such as you probably spend a lot of time on your podcast.
Right.
Like, I love coaching, and I don't have to spend a bunch of time, but I end up being at the school every day, staying an hour before, an hour after. Just stuff that you like doing.
Right.
And so with that and, other things I do in my free time, we have, there's a huge amusement park in Sandusky called Cedar Point. And it's probably one of the biggest thrill parks in the world. And we have season passes there every year. So like my 4-year-old, I'll just go there, you know, with her all day. Sometimes we'll go there 3 or 4 times a week during the summer. It doesn't matter. It's fun. It's only about a half hour. It's only a half hour away. And, you know, other things I still enjoy playing basketball. Like there's a, you know, I haven't done it in a while, but there's a Saturday morning league, like a men's league that I would go to once in a while.
Okay.
And, you know, it's always fun because, you know, people don't know what, even still to this day, I mean, I've been an amputee for almost 32 years. And still to this day, you know, people try and take it easy on you when you're doing physical activities and this and that. And then they see that I'll truck and run them right over trying to go for a layup. And they're like, okay, well, I guess I got to start guarding this guy. You know, so.
One of the things,
you know, it's fun. I try to stay as active as I can, and, you know,
yeah.
And then, you know, when school starts, it's a lot harder because then you got homework.
Oh, right.
You know, we don't even need to get into that. My kids are smarter than I am. I can't even help them with their homework. But
yeah, I don't have human children. You know, I have a dog, and I know that's not the same. But I have young nieces, and my oldest niece is in preschool now. And she can do things at 5 years old that when I was 5 and doing like preschool and kindergarten, it was like finger paints and watercolors, you know, and it's so much more advanced than that now. And, you know, she's
they have iPads in the preschool room.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I need to go back to preschool and learn some things. You know, because they're intelligent and it requires a lot to keep up with them. One of the activities that I know that you're involved in, that I'm involved in, that we don't talk a lot about, it's kind of a fun thing. This year we started an amputee fantasy football league.
That's right.
And I don't know if it's ever been done before. It probably has. I'm not aware of any, but it was for amputees only. And we might have took a little bit of slack over that, but that's okay. Week 1, you obviously beat my pants off. Because I don't know what happened. I think Tom Brady was kidnapped myself, and it was an imposter. That was
a very unfortunate incident.
But that's something, you know, we do, and you know, we trash talk a little bit, you know, and so whoever I beat Peg Leg Trainer on Sunday. We're actually getting her on the podcast, and I beat her on Sunday, you know, so I was talking a little bit of trash about that. But I know that I'll lose again, but that's just something fun. But that just shows how amputees can come together and actually do something fun together, and you know, not have the debates over feet or knees or anything. And just
yeah, and it's nice because I've tried so many times in the Cleveland area to, you know, have a support group or try and do this and that, and it's just like you know, we do have a VA here, and that's probably where 90% or 95% of the Cleveland area amputees are.
Okay.
But, and I do visit there occasionally, but there's not, you know, so it's nice to have these online things, whether we're joking around or we're being serious, because a lot of people, you know, and I don't even live in a rural area.
Right.
I mean, there's 1.3 million people in Cleveland and the surrounding, you know, suburbs.
Right.
And I can barely find anybody to have a conversation with about any prosthetics or anything like that. So, you know, it's nice. It's, you know, as much bashing as we've done about social media so far, it is nice to have that.
It is.
And have things like, you know, an amputee fantasy football league, and this to kind of just, you know, be around people like you, but, you know, in a normal setting.
Right. And I don't want people to think, you know, that listen and think, oh, I better, you know, I'm an amputee, I better stay off social media. We're not saying that. I mean, you know, there's commercials out there that make it funny, you know, about maybe it's an insurance commercial or something, but the lady is literally posting pictures to the wall in her living room. And, you know, her friend's like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And then there's the other one where the lady is like sitting at her dining room table with a hammer, literally crushing candy, you know. And so social media is not for everyone, of course, but it's a good place, you know, like you said, to come and to get together. And the good definitely outweighs the bad, I think, for the amputee community on social media.
For sure.
So what are some of the things, the lessons that you have learned about yourself as you have grown up from being a child to being an adult as an amputee?
I mean, there's a lot, but I'd say one of the biggest ones is something we covered a little bit is, is being your own advocate, not accepting, I've accepted sockets that didn't fit that great just because I got tired of going to the clinic, or I felt bad because I felt like I was being too petty about it. This one little spot doesn't, but that's important because I've spent 6 months in a crappy socket, bashing myself over the head, wishing I would have spoke up because now it's too late. I guess another big thing would be, don't be afraid to try, whatever you want to do, whether it's something to do with athletics or it's something you want to do with your kids. One of the biggest things to get over, and I still deal with it, is, people staring at you. And you just have to come to the realization that everyone's going to stare at you. And it doesn't matter if you stay in your house for 3 years and try to avoid it, or you just accept it and deal with it and go outside. Everyone's going to stare with you. And it's a mental block you kind of have to get over. And so, holding yourself back from being in public and taking your leg off to go swimming, or wearing your leg and go swimming, or going, for me, it was hard when I first had kids to go to when my kids are 3 and 4 years old and going on, kid activities with the school, or, places where a bunch of little kids are going to be, because I know the first thing they're going to do is everyone look at his leg, and
right.
Me being at that point, I was already an amputee for 20 years. And for that to still bother me, shows how big of a deal, it can be. So, to try and do your best and have someone to talk to just get over that fear of, people staring at you. And one of the best things I could have did is one year I went to Cedar Point on Veterans Day, not realizing it was Veterans Day, but the whole 10 hours at Cedar Point, I got thanked for my service, and I got this and that. And I feel bad. I honestly get thanked for my service once or twice today. Wow. And I always stop to tell them, I wasn't in the military. I've had since I was 4, because, I have too much respect for those guys that did have to go through that. And, I thank God every day that it wasn't a traumatic injury for me, and it was a birth defect. But, just don't miss out on things that, especially with your kids, because, it's sad to see the look on their faces, because kids they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Right.
They don't want to tell you, they're not going to say, I'm disappointed that you didn't do this and that, but you can see it in their face, that they're upset they didn't get to do something because you were holding yourself back. So whether it's involved with kids or not, don't hold yourself back. Just if you go out and try whatever you're afraid of, you're going to realize it's not that bad. And it was more in your head. You were just overthinking it.
Right.
And, with those 2 pieces of advice, there's everything else in your life can kind of fall into place. And not that life's going to be perfect, but your life as an amputee is probably 80 to 90% mental. A lot of it's in your head. The physical things you can learn, and, you can walk again. If you were a runner and you want to run again, it's a lot of it's muscle memory and will.
Right.
So if you can get over the mental debates in your head that you're going to have the rest of your life, that's going to give you the winning hand right there.
Absolutely. And that's some good advice. One of the things that we see often, especially in some of the Facebook groups, is we see people, amputees who are struggling with, maybe they're struggling physically, or maybe, like you said, maybe they're struggling emotionally and mentally. And we know that, most every amputee at some point goes through the 5 stages of grief. And most every amputee will have times of self-doubt. And one of the things we often see are people who, I've lost a limb and now my life is over, or I've been an amputee for 5 years and I'm still sitting on the couch. And, one of the things for me personally that becoming an amputee has taught me is empathy. I used to think that I had empathy, but after becoming an amputee, I learned that I really didn't. And so I know everyone's in a different place in their journey. Everyone's, not everyone's going to go through being an amputee the same. What kind of advice or encouragement would you give for people that are at the point where they're just struggling to even feel like they can take their life back?
Well, I mean, one of the first things I would encourage someone to do is find someone you can talk to that can understand, and someone that's made it through. You know, I've done a lot of hospital visits and a lot of visits at the VA. And, you know, unfortunately, that's a lot of people's mental state, is that, you know, they're comparing themselves to everyone else. And look at this guy in the bed next to me. You know, we had our surgeries the same day, and I still can't even get in my socket without it hurting. And, you know, you can't compare yourself to anyone else.
Right.
Just because someone else can run, someone else can walk, someone else can this or that. You know, you have to be able to do it on your own time and not give yourself false expectations.
Yeah.
So I think my advice, you know, as long as you can honestly tell yourself you're trying and not just putting it out there like, woe is me, as long as you're honestly trying to do it, you know, just keep struggling and keep going at that, and find someone that can give you some type of hope and inspiration, because it doesn't matter if we're amputees or someone has cancer or someone has MS. I mean, there's always someone that's in your situation that you can look up to. Even, you know, there's still people that I look up to and I say, man, I want to do stuff like that, you know, and I've been amputee for 32 years, and you know, so there's always someone you can find, someone that can do a little more than you can do, and somebody that you can, you know, make some goals to not just be like them, but to if you want to say you want to get up and walk, then make that your goal, whether it takes you a month or it takes you 10 years, as long as you're honest with yourself and every day you can say, I tried more to get that goal, and eventually you'll get there.
Absolutely. So today I've been talking with Josh Green, and for more information about Josh, connect with him on Facebook at Chef J Green. Josh, thanks for taking time out of your day to join me on Revamp. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was a lot of fun.
You've been listening to Revamped, the #1 amputee podcast hosted by an amputee and brought to you by Delatory Orthotics and Prosthetics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you've enjoyed today's episode, leave us a review on iTunes or give us a like on Facebook. I'm Brian Mosier. I invite you to visit our website, www.revampedpodcast.com, and connect with us on Facebook at Revamped Podcast.